Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast. I'm your host and beat writer, Brock Vieira. You can check out all of our work at www.si.com/NFL /Rams /on SI, where we drop double digit pieces of content every single day. So today we're going to be talking about the Rams, the NFL Combine, and some of the takeaways and the lessons that we've learned from that event. So, of course, the combine was last week, and the Rams were not in attendance. Essentially, they sent a skeleton crew out to Indianapolis. That's what they normally do. Sean McVay doesn't go, Muslim doesn't go, and I don't blame them. There's really nothing of value for them over there because of the way that they go about scouting and evaluating players. There's a process that they undergo that has allowed them to find gems and spots that other teams have struggled, both primarily day two, day three, and then, of course, undrafted free agent talent that has allowed them to produce championship success and a continued overall success, despite only having made one first round selection in Sean McVay's 9 years, now going to his 10th year in charge. That selection, of course, being Jared Verse. Those first round picks were leveraged for players in the past like Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Jalen Ramsey. So you kind of get the picture. The Rams not having to take a first round pick means that a lot of guys that are evaluated at the combine, those measurables, they don't really matter because they're not going to be the top guys and they're not going to be guys that are going to be utilized in a certain type of way. Of course, they do look at it. I mean, Braden Fisk day at the combine shot him up the draft charts, and the Rats selected him for a reason, a selection that of course paid off. But when we heard Leslie talk earlier at his end of year presser, he says that whatever happens in the combine or this, pre-draft testing period, it doesn't change the makeup of the player. You still got to go off the film. You still got to go off the character, off the things that they can control. Effort, attitude, right, the way that they attack, or things of that nature. And that's why they've been able to find so many gems because they look at those controllables, they pair that with the film, and they try to find players that kind of fit the best of both worlds. It's a bit different this year because we do have two first round picks, and that's what we're going to dive into right now. Those picks, how the Rams are going to utilize them, and the questions that they have to ask themselves after the combine. So the first things first is what happened during the combine, and the biggest news what happened with the New York Jets and the Tennessee Titans. The Jets traded edge defender Jermaine Johnson to Tennessee for defensive tackle Devondre Sweat. This move indicates that the Jets, who have the second overall pick, are likely to draft an edge defender for Aaron Glenn's system, whether that's Texas Tech David Bailey or Ruben Bain from Miami or um, the edge defender from Ohio State, whose name has slipped my mind, unfortunately, at this time, or honestly, any of the great Ohio State players that had a phenomenal day at the combine. Um, Reese is the last name. Arvell Reese, I believe is the name. Any of those guys go number two. And often, when it comes to a position of high value, like an edge defender position, when one guy goes, there's often a domino effect. Now, this is going to affect the Rams in a negative and a positive way. The negative part is the edge rusher or a pass rusher market, which I'll get into in a second because that's kind of extensive. But then the other way is this: if edge rushers start going early, let's say all three of them go, and of course Fernando Mendoza, the expected first round pick. That means that four of the top 12 selections, or one third of the top 12 selections, are going to be either Fernando Mendoza or an edge rusher, two positions the Rams do not need at the moment. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Ty Simpson, the other top quarterback in this draft, is going to be taken before 13, and obviously the Rams take him at 13. So it's not like they can get another pick pushed back. But when you start looking at how the board kind of shakes out after that, there's going to be a tremendous amount of talent. And there's not, now at this point, there's going to be, what, eight picks before the Rams are allowed to select? There's not eight top players and then there's a fall off at 13. There's going to be a good chance the Rams can land somebody very well. The question is who. And then that kind of takes us back to the other part, which is the edge defender slash pass rusher market. So this is going to be a very intriguing market because of these various factors. The draft, I expect to have multiple edge defenders go early. And then Albert Breer, Sports Illustrated, also made a report that he expects if Max Crosby is traded is to happen this week or possibly next. Pardon me. The reason is because of the free agent market opening up. And of course, when free agency opens, it's the Wild West and teams are spending like crazy. When you have to negotiate a deal for a contract the size of Crosby, you want to make sure that the team at the other end of the table is going to be able to have the financial capital in order to execute that trade, along with whatever capital they might give up in order to make the trade happen. If a team doesn't feel like they're confident and they can grab Crosby, but then go out and get a guy like maybe Trey Hendrickson or someone of that nature, they're going to go do that. So I'm expecting a lot of edge defenders to start flying off the board very, very early, both in the draft and in free agency, and possibly even the trade market as well for a player like Max Crosby or maybe someone else we're not talking about at this time. So if the Rams want to get an edge defender, they have to act this week or just don't act at all. And if not, they're going to miss out on a premier guy. But knowing their track record with guys like Josiah Stewart and Byron Young, they can definitely pick up a project guy in day three and improve that player over time. When we talk about instant impact, it's going to be hard. The good news is how this transitions into the wide receiver and cornerback market, which is kind of the other big takeaway from the combine. The wide receiver market is interesting because the Rams don't need one right now, but they do need a replacement for Tutu Atwell. And if they just need speed, there's a lot of options throughout the draft. But if they want a third critical threat that serves as a bridge that from now to the next era when guys like Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams hang up their cleats, they can make a selection that can change the course of their franchise. There's so many great wide receivers that I expected to go in the first round. Texas A&M's Casey Concepcion, I hope I said his name correctly. USC's Makai Lemon, Arizona State's Jordan Tyson, Ohio State's Carnell Tate, so many guys. Omar Cooper, I believe, from Indiana. A lot of top players. But the question comes: do you select them with the 13th, or you select that player with the 29th pick? And which position are you willing to take a risk on? Because if you don't select the receiver and maybe go with a cornerback, maybe there's a run of receivers that takes place in that middle, like 18 to 25 range, where you're kind of out of luck. And this is a team that tried to trade up for Tetsuya McMillan and also Emeka Ibuka last year. So there is clear interest to add a wide receiver. Then comes the final question, which is the cornerback question. Last year, Emmanuel Forbes, who's essentially the only cornerback on the roster that I expect to be on the roster this year from last year, he's a player that is good when given a good matchup. When he can go against a speedy, shifty guy like even a Jackson Smith and Jigba, who he did very well against repeatedly, he's great. When he has to go up against a bigger bodied receiver like AJ Brown, he struggles. His frame is simply not built for it. Kobe Durant either. Do the Rams spend top capital on a cornerback who is built to defend those type of players, or do they try and get a cornerback who's just the best around, and then maybe try to find that other specialty guy with either a later round pick or the veteran free agent market? In my opinion, when you look back at last year, there's so many top versatile defenders in this draft that you can spend day two, day three picks on, but shut down, lockdown corners are not bountiful. You need to go and get that position with a 13th pick. You need to not let last year happen again. Even if you think that there is a better way to go about it, you one in the hand is better than two in the bush. You have more than enough to win, except in that position. And safety to an extent. Cam Kitchens is great, but there's no one there to really replace Cam Curl. So that's another position they need to address. But cornerback is a lot more important. Here's why. Emmanuel Forbes has only 1 year left on his rookie deal, plus a potential fifth round option that the Rams must decide on this year. I think he has a long term future in Los Angeles. I think that he's a player who won't get top dollar, and that's important because this is a position that the Rams usually don't pay. I think that if they can get a guy like Jamal McCoy or Colton Hood or uh, Monsieur Delane, any player of that caliber, and they turn out to be as good as we think they are, Emmanuel Forbes is an excellent cornerback too. And then it allows the organization to have that kind of third rotational spot open for whomever they might see fit. And I think in that scenario, if you can find both a permanent outside corner and an outside inside guy like Roger McCreary, which I've seen multiple cases of there being available in this draft, then you're going to create a secondary that is going to grow together. That's going to grow within the system and be able to sustain the success once those defensive coaches start to leave. The Rams already made bold moves in their secondary from a coaching staff perspective, parting ways with Aubrey Pleasant and Mike Harris, bringing in some of these other guys and promoting guys like Jimmy Lake into bigger roles. If there's a time to reinvent that room, it's now. And you need to do so with the best capital you got. If I'm the Rams and I'm looking at this draft and I'm looking at the combine, my biggest takeaway is this. The cornerbacks are plentiful, but top cornerback talent isn't. It's a position that's a need for the Rams, the greatest need. And it's also a place that doesn't demand massive expense. Or perhaps, should I say, the Rams refuse to spend a whole lot of money at that position. A first round pick, if it hits, solves this answer to that position for the next 4 to 5 years. What could be better than that, especially as you're trying to chase the championship this next year? This has been Brock Fiera for the Los Angeles Rams Insider Podcast. We'll catch y'all next time. Take care.